From the studios of the Pemberton Township Board of Education's Channel 14, it's time to find out what's cooking. Here now is the head of the Food Services Department at Pemberton Township High School and your host, Tim Paroli.
Hello again, and welcome to another edition of What's Cooking. I'm Tim Paroli, and today we're going to show you how you can prepare the food you see in a restaurant right at home. Or if you think you can't even boil peas, stick around. Today we're going to show you how to prepare short ribs. Short ribs is a menu item that many of us get in the restaurant, and we love the taste of them. We see them in the market, we never buy them. The way they look in the beginning and the way they look on the plate, it's hard to believe that that's the meal that you order. Short ribs are the spare rib from a beef. They're much larger because they come from a larger animal. The rib itself, the bone, is very wide, very flat, and the amount of meat on each one varies pretty much depending on the butcher that you go to. However, your short ribs should look like the ones I have here. Generally, in a pack of short ribs, you'll get a package this size will have 4 of the size I'm showing you here. Now what we did, because these take a little bit of time, is I hurried half of the order up so we'll be able to see it later on. But I want to show you the part of this so you know what you're purchasing. And don't be upset when you first go to buy them if you haven't seen them live before. This whole section on the back is the rib, this whole white section. And it goes the entire width of what you see here. This whole rectangle is the piece of the rib bone. Now attached to that is this nice hunk of meat here, with a lot of marbling and fat and flecking all through that. And on the side you'll see that it is not very, very thick compared to the amount of bone that you get with it. That's the big one. The smaller one, which comes a little further up on the rib, the same rule will apply. The back or white side will be the rib, and again you'll see there's a pretty good percentage of fat mixed in with the meat. Now, while I get ready to explain the rest of this to you, I just want to start up a frying pan. What we're going to do with these, the type of cooking that we're going to demonstrate for you today is called braising. Now, braising is a type of moist heat cooking. Whenever you hear that something has been braised, you know that liquid has been applied to what you have ordered, and it's also should tell you that you're eating a tougher cut of meat. Don't let that upset you, that the tougher cut with the braising and all that, because some of our better tasting meats are tougher cuts. Your brisket of beef, considered to be very tough and very fatty. However, if you've ever had corned beef or pastrami, you know how much taste there is in that. So the same thing applies. Why is the short rib so popular? And the reason is all those little bits of fat and that large amount of bone that I showed you on these. The short rib itself has all of that on there, and it's going to have a lot of flavor to it. So I'm heating up a small saute pan, and you see I don't have one of my good ones out because this one we're going to kind of ruin it. We're going to put it into an oven, we're going to put liquid in it, and we're just going to kind of abuse the pan a little bit. So we're going to heat this up nice and hot. And then I'm going to take and we're going to cut up a little bit of onion because the strong flavor of these short ribs are going to need something a little stronger to go with them. So we're going to just get that ready. And remember now, we're only going to cook that small piece of meat that's hanging on the outside of that. So a package of 4 of those little ribs, you could probably polish them off yourself. So you want to make sure that you have a substantial menu with it. Today we're going to show you how to prepare some baked macaroni and cheese. And a lot of us might eat that all by itself as a meal. So it's kind of a nice heavy side dish to go with that little bit of spare rib, short rib rather. All right, first thing we're going to do is take these now and dredge them in flour. And what we do is we roll the entire piece of meat into the flour. We're going to coat it all over, and then we're going to shake off the excess. And we're going to do that to the other one. and that's called dredging. So when you see a term, dredge them in flour, that's all they want you to do. Just enough flour to coat it, shake off the excess, and there they are ready to go in. Now the pan is nice and hot, and I have a little bit of oil here, and we're going to put that in our pan. Now I have just enough in here to coat the bottom. Now that went into a hot pan, and we're rolling this around to evenly distribute the heat throughout the pan and the oil. And from the time you first put the oil in the pan, you will notice that the oil will get very thin, and that's what you're looking for. And the last thing that we're going to wait for that's going to happen as I'm speaking to you is the oil will reach its smoke point. So we want this oil to be very hot, and we're heading to that right now. And the minute that gets that hot, we're going to just set those ribs right in there. And it doesn't matter what side goes down. It does not matter at all to us. All right, now you can hear that they're sizzling away right away, and we're going to season them with some salt and some pepper. Now, if you paid attention to the first part, you're saying, where does the moisture come in? We're going to show you. First that we want to do now is to completely cook the rib on all sides. So we're going to cook that a little bit, and then we're going to turn it over, and we're going to cook the other side. And we want to get this nice and crispy. The amount of color that we add to it is going to be done now in the pan, and that's what we're after. We also want to give it a fried flavor. A short rib is very different from a boiled beef. The taste is completely different. And the way that we get that is by cooking it like this. It's in the hot oil, it's already turned brown on the one side, and this part of the cooking process goes very quickly. If you have a lot of the ribs, you heat the pan up and you would brown them all off and put them into a roast pan if you'd like. Now, the flour on the outside is absorbing some of the oil, is being picked up by that. It's also helping us to brown that. So now we're going to stand the ends up. And I use a pair of tongs when I'm doing this. And you want to be careful as you brown them. You're browning these two ends, hang on to them, because it's only going to take you a minute to drive the heat into there. You'll see that the other end of the bone now is turning red. That's because we're applying heat to the bone and it's pushing the moisture right out of it. Okay, now we're going to lay them on a flat side. And you can see the top part is going to be the last one that we have to do, our last side. But we want to make sure that we've cooked them completely, all the way around, so that we seal and crisp up the outside. And it's also being done in oil, and we're getting this oil temperature very hot. When you get the oil so hot that it's going to smoke, you're already well over 350, 375 degrees. And what that's going to do is going to fry the flour so that there's going to be no pasty taste to this meat when it's cooked. Now, I already have our oven turned on because these are going to be cooked in the oven. When we braise something, it may start out on the top of the range, but it's going to end up in our oven. And I want you to notice when you're cooking any kind of rib that the meat will begin, the minute you cook it, will begin to pull away from the bone. I want to pull this one over here and let you take a look at it, maybe from overhead. And you can see already how the bone is already pulling out right there and right there. You can see the bone is already pulled out about 1/4 of an inch. And that's what we want to see, because that tells you that you're cooking that and the meat is already beginning to shrink a little bit. All right, we're going to cook the last ends here. This should smell pretty good by the time you get to this part, and these do. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to try these. And we have them all browned up. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove them from the heat Stick them right in one of those little pans for a second or two. All right, so the ribs are browned up. And at this point, although they do smell good and they will look good, they're going to be very, very tough if you were to try to eat them now. And I'm going to get rid of a little bit of our oil here. And I'm going to put in our onion, and we're going to brown that. So all of the color that you see on whether it's a Swiss steak or a chicken fried steak or a braised short rib like we're showing you today, in order to get that deep color and that real strong flavor that we like, you want to make sure that you fry them all up first and get a lot of color on them. And you're going to burn the pan up a little bit. So for doing a few orders at a time, you'll get a skillet that you like. An iron skillet is nice. Aluminum will work fine like this one. However, they do tend to discolor. Now, if you notice the onions, since this pan is so hot, we've already began to put color to the onions. And since I told you that this is moist heat that we're going to be using, this is going to take a while till we get that good and brown, and then it's going to take a while to cook it. So we get all of our color in there. And then I have two other ingredients that we're going to add to that. And what I've got here is a container with a little bit of water, and I broke up a little bit of our beef base into it. And that's the same for you at home. You could use a couple bouillon cubes. And make it so you have a beef tea or a beef broth that's kind of mild in flavor. It doesn't have to be very salty or have a whole lot of flavor to it, because you're going to get an awful lot from these ribs. All right, so the onions have picked up some color. I'm going to return our spare ribs right back into our shorts into the pan there. Now we're going to add some of our beef stock to that. And that's going to slow down the cooking process. Now we've just gone from 300 degrees, we're down around 212 if it's boiling away. And then, if you have some leftover meat sauce or even a spoonful of tomato paste, you're going to put a spoonful of that right in there and stir it in. And we just make sure that that comes to a nice boil. We bring that to a good boil. And what I'm going to do, once this comes up, we're going to just turn those ribs over one time so that we have the juice is completely around the rib. And it's already beginning to boil because we went right back into a hot pan. And the other thing when you're braising, you only have to have it maybe halfway with water. 1/3 to 2/3 up with the liquid is going to be fine. All right, so I'm going to turn these ribs over a little bit now. And we're going to lay them right down in that juice. There we go. I'm going to add another, I know I told you one, but I'm adding two because I want to just change the color of this just a little bit. So I'm stirring in my second spoonful of tomato. I say tomato because it can be anything at all, any kind of a tomato product that you would want to add to that, whatever's handy. And if you don't have one handy, you can make it without it. The only thing it will do is change the color. It won't have any of that amber or red color to it, and it won't have the flavor, won't be as strong. All right. Now, once you have that rib pan boiling, shut it off. I'm going to give that a little bit of a, okay, it's already off the bottom of the pan. I'm going to reach under here, get myself a piece of aluminum foil. I'm going to put this here so you can see that all we have to do with this, there we go, is take and just cover that lightly. This doesn't have to be covered with a real tight lid. All right, loosely right on there, and then that's going to go right into our oven. And all we want to do with that is set your oven, if you're in a conventional oven at home, 350 degrees will do just fine. And the average time on short ribs, since they're all the same size, is going to take you 25 minutes in the oven. If you have an awful lot in the oven and you're not sure that the cooking time has not made them as tender as you like, when we come back, we're going to show you how to check them to make sure they're done. So while they're in the oven cooking away, I've got a little bit of a mess going here. I'm going to get cleaned up and set up so we can show you the second half of our menu. So I'd like you folks at home to watch this.
If you're the kind of person who'd rather tune an engine than eat, who reads a tachometer like a love story, for whom the roar of fully blown horsepower is a lullaby, have we got a machine for you? The F-16 Fighting Falcon. It'll crank out a generous 50,000 horsepower, enough to push it from 0 to 1350 in under a minute. And in the hands of the right mechanic, it'll blow the doors off anything. Aim high, Air Force.
Welcome back. After I got the mess cleaned up, what we started on was the second half of our menu, and all we've done is cook off some elbow macaroni, and they're just now, they're just about done. Baked macaroni, a lot of people either have trouble with it, that it is breaking up when they, instead of staying together, or they have trouble that it is too thin. Now we're going to show you how you can do this and do it very quickly. What you do is you just bring some boiling salted water and throw in some elbows. When the elbows are just tender, like these are tender now, shut off the fire, give them a stir, throw a lid on it, and now they're going to wait for us, and that gives me plenty of time to judge the cooking time on those for our baked macaroni. And we're also going to do something, I'm going to get them ready first, is I'm going to put them in the little casseroles, because I found for a lot of you folks at home, making the cream sauce and the roux and all that is like a big chore, or you don't want to do it all the time. So what you do is set up a few of these, make them and throw them in the freezer. And then you have your own dinner that you can pop right out of the freezer, and you can throw it right into a regular oven or right into the microwave if you want. So you can set yourself up for a meal or two, and when you're too busy, you can still have your own cooking. All right, into a fairly heavy pot, we're going to put some butter, and we're going to let that butter melt. And I've got approximately 2 tablespoons of butter there. Now while that's melting, I'm going to just cut some sharp cheese. You can use any kind of cheese that you like. However, if you really enjoy a mozzarella cheese, or you really enjoy like the Munster, any of those types of softer cheeses, they can make your macaroni very, very stringy. And sometimes they have a tendency to break or clump up. That won't hurt the flavor of it, however, it will change the texture a little bit. So if you want to start out, use a little bit of an American cheese and put a little bit of a sharp cheese in there. You don't have to have all cheddar. All cheddar, all by itself, is kind of oily and will have a tendency to break apart. So you want to kind of mix up the cheeses that you use, and that's going to give you a good variety of taste and flavor in your macaroni. All right, I have enough butter in there. We're going to just coat the bottom. There we go. And I have the bottom of the pot, and I want you to just take a look at, we're using the flour, and we're going to just put in enough flour in here, just enough to suck up the butter. We want to make sure that that's all gone. So there we go. We go from the melted butter to something that resembles wet sand. Now, in the beginning, we told you when you fry something, it alters the taste because you can get the flavor and the temperature so high So that's what we're doing right now. We're actually frying this flour. And by frying that flour, we are changing its flavor. We're actually toasting it. So it's, once that fries up there just a little bit, it's going to be a light kind of a sauce. Let me get another one here because I want to put them all in at once. So we don't want to add any color at this point. So we fry that for just a minute or two, and we're going to put the milk right in there. Now, this thickener that I'm using is flour and butter, and it's called a roux. And we cook that, and then we add the milk to it. Now, you can either add hot milk to the hot roux or cold milk to the hot roux. And just stir it around like I have here. And I tip the pot up so I can see that I'm getting in all the corners of it. And that's going to thicken right up. Now, it will completely thicken once this reaches the boiling point. So what I'm going to do is that's going to get stirred every couple minutes while we're here. But when this is ready, I want the noodles to be ready. So I'm going to drain off our noodles. I'm going to just swing the pot over here, and I'm going to loosen the noodles because when they set, they're still absorbing the water because they're so hot now, they're absorbing the water. So the noodles are loose. The sauce gets a stir, and I'm going to drain them right through our colander here. All right. And then we have our noodles drained, and they're going to go right back there, and they're ready for our sauce. Now, as I stir the sauce, it thickens up. If you take a look in here right now, we've already picked up that it's doubled its thickness. And once it begins to do that, stay right with your sauce because it's going to get very thick very fast. All right, and you'll see by staying right with it, as it thickens, it's going to pick up a nice shine and it's going to be very, very smooth. And if you were to taste this right now, it should taste to you kind of like a flat, bland cream of wheat is the kind of a taste it's going to have. Now we're going to add our cheese to it. The moment you think it's going to boil, put your cheese in there. Put the cheese right in there and stir it right around. Because that's all nice and hot. And that'll be nice and thick. And as it melts that cheese, it's going to take on the color from any cheese. If you're using an orange cheese like I am today, that's going to melt and it's going to add that texture to that cheese sauce. And now I'm shutting the fire off even before it boils because the cheese is already softened up and the sauce is already the right consistency. It's nice and thick. You can see it there. All right, and we're stirring that right on around. And now, right into that pot, well, before I do that, we're going to go like this once. A little bit of salt, and it's going to need a little bit of pepper. So I'm putting in a little bit of salt, and I'm using pepper today is white pepper. Because we got a light sauce, we don't want any little black specks in there. Stir that one more time. And now I'm done with that. We're going to go with a spoon and we're going to put the noodles right into our sauce. There we go. And we stir them around to completely coat them with the cheese. And then once we have done that, now we can put this into our casserole, or casseroles if you're setting up a bunch of them. Because as easy as it looks here, it is once you have a little bit of practice with making this sauce. And it will go together very quickly. The whole secret is having everything ready when the sauce is ready and making sure that the pot you have is one of your better pots, a nice, thick, heavy pot so that it won't burn on the bottom. And then we just put them right out. And the cheese is running right in there with the sauce. There's still a couple little flecks of it in there. And what I'm going to do is we're going to put 2 of these aside, and we'll set 2 of them up in our oven. What I do when I'm handling these, learn to handle them when they're cold. If you just very gently touch them like that, and you can pick them right up on a spatula, you can move them very easily. So we're going to slide these into the oven uncovered. And they're very hot now. And what you want to do with them now is the only thing that you're going to be adding to your baked macaroni is color. All of our ingredients are in there. If you want the top really, really crunchy, the only thing that you would do differently to it would be to put some buttered breadcrumbs on the top of it. And if you were to put the buttered breadcrumbs on there, it'll really get it brown and crispy looking. All right, so we're going to remove our ribs that went in earlier, and all you have to do with these is remove that, and you will notice that the rib is sticking out very far from either end, and that is your indication that the ribs themselves are done. And a portion of ribs is usually 2. So when you see that package of ribs, that's going to be your indication that if there's 4 pieces in there, assume that 2 are going to make 1 portion for you. And now I want to move that. Another thing that we do in the big kitchen is we'll dust the handle with flour on a frying pan that has been used in the oven so that everybody knows that that whole pan is hot. And the reason I don't use a good saute pan is because we want to leave the finish in a good saute pan. Once you boil in one of these, you're going to take away any kind of a finish that you might have built up. That oiled finish will be removed by boiling in that pan. And we're going to pull out our little side dish here and put it right next to it. I don't like the 2 of them to run together. It's the other reason I like the little casseroles, aside from the fact that they bake so quickly. And they've already set up. I mean, that's only been in our little oven for just a moment or 2. And the next thing it'll pick up is color. So when you want to go by the meat department, check out the short ribs, because remember, braising is the way to cook them. We've shown you that today. And make one of America's favorites, macaroni and cheese. Thank you for watching.